One of the biggest problems people face today isn't a lack of motivation, it's a lack of action. We've become great at thinking about our actions, imagining what doing an action would be like, and even going so far as to plan an action. But we completely run into a brick wall when it comes to actually doing the action. But the real problem here is not what you think. The big issue with an action isn't just that you don't move towards your goal and you don't make progress in your life and you don't get to achieve what you want to achieve, but it's the way that you end up feeling about yourself and the identity that you build as a result of this inaction. We call this becoming the self-loathing person of inaction. This is where someone doesn't do an action, and then afterwards they feel self-loathing, they feel self-hatred because they didn't do the action. This is difficult because many people can relate to this, where we talk ourselves up, we hype ourselves up about doing something, and then when the time actually comes to it, we have every excuse in the book to not do it, but then we end up feeling so bad about ourselves afterwards. This is such a brutal cycle that only worsens over time. Because when someone doesn't do an action and then they become a self-loathing person because of it and they end up having self-hatred, they push themselves down and they have such a strong negative self-image, they engage in so much negative self-talk that they end up decreasing their motivation and their belief in themselves to do future action. So if someone keeps engaging in inaction, if someone keeps putting off doing the right thing for themselves, doing something good for themselves, they eventually build up this identity that they're not the type of person who does action. And then they keep feeling bad about themselves because they're not taking that action. Let's say someone really isn't in shape and they've been wanting to go to the gym for so long. They keep telling themselves, the only thing I need to do is go to the gym. That's the next step on their agenda. That's what they need to do. But every time their alarm goes off on their phone, it says go to gym. And they're thinking, should I go to the gym? I don't know. And they start second guessing it and they end up not going. But then a few hours later, this person just feels so bad about themselves for not going that they end up sinking deeper and deeper into this self-loathing mode, and then this painful cycle continues. Fine, so then they don't go one day, and they feel bad about themselves later in the day. But then what happens the next day? They say, no, tomorrow I'm really gonna go. I promise tomorrow I'm really gonna go. And then the same thing happens again, and they say, well, I didn't go yesterday. Okay, fine, I'll just push it off one more day. And they keep pushing it off further and further down the line, and they keep feeling worse and worse about themselves. So now they not only have a behavioral pattern of they're not doing the action, but now they have this emotional pattern of they just feel so bad about themselves for not doing what they said they were going to do, for not staying true to their own word, and for not doing what they know they could and should be doing. So over time, this pattern works like an evil yin and yang, where it keeps spiraling one side into the other, where someone doesn't do an action, and then they feel bad about themselves, and then they keep not doing the action, they feel worse, and this spirals further and further down until this person's almost in a pit of despair based on the inaction. But why did this cycle start in the first place? How do we even get here? A big reason why we end up in states of inaction that we end up feeling bad about ourselves for is because we have unconscious standards that we set for ourselves in order to do actions. We're likely not even aware of it, which is why it's unconscious. But a lot of times these standards act as permission for what's required in order to do an action. And so often, this standard that we set for ourselves is that the action has to be absolutely perfect. We have to know with full certainty, which is impossible, but we have to know with full certainty that we're going to make the right action. This is also often referred to as perfectionism, where we want to choose an action that is perfect, an action that is absolutely right with no chance of it being wrong, and only then we can act. So let's take the person going to the gym. What might be going through their mind? Well, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do at the gym. I don't know how long I'm going to spend there. I don't know all these different variables that we tell ourselves. We fall into what's called analysis paralysis, where we keep analyzing the issue and we can speak it out. We can really tell you what we want to do. We know what the next step should be, but we just feel stuck. And that's because we operate under this false belief that we're going to find the perfect solution. When we're in this analysis paralysis, we let perfect be the enemy of good enough, or we let perfect be the enemy of done. When we continuously push things to be perfect and we say, okay, it needs to be X, Y, and Z way, these are the conditions that need to be met in order for me to take action, only then I can take action. Only then, once these things are already done and I know these things to be true, then I can make the change in my life. That's the trap. Because the truth is, that's not how life works. The key here is learning to act in imperfection. But how do we do that? Because that sounds scary, because this whole thing is we're not acting because we're waiting for the perfect moment. We're waiting for things to be absolutely clear to us that this is the right move. And now we have to undo that. The truth is, action always involves some level of uncertainty. No matter what choice we're going to make and no matter what action we're going to do, Action always involves some level of not knowing the outcome, not knowing exactly what's going to happen. And now, this can be just as freeing as it is terrifying. Oftentimes, we end up in this cycle of inaction because either subconsciously or even consciously, we're so scared of what the outcome may be, of not knowing what the outcome is. We keep trying to learn more and do more research and wait until we have full certainty, full clarity on an issue, which will never really come, to actually take action. But if we can take a step back and truly accept or move towards acceptance that taking action is always going to involve some level of uncertainty, well, then we become so much freer to actually take action. Because if we say, you know what, I'm going to do an action that is good enough, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do in the gym today, but I'm going to go and I'm going to do something that is a step in the right direction that's going to be good enough, we give ourselves permission to actually take action. It's giving ourselves permission to act in imperfection. So that's the key here. If we want to break our negative cycles, we have to understand where they come from. A lot of times inaction comes from a fear of the unknown, a fear of the uncertain. But if we can give ourselves a little bit of leeway to accept some uncertainty in our life so that we can actually take action and move the needle on our goal just a little bit, that's how we're actually going to be able to take action in our lives. Thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments any thoughts you have on this topic. Click a video right here if you're looking for more life-changing content, and remember to hit life on all cylinders.